Welcome everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday Creator Convos. I'm Noelle Marshall, and I am here with my beloved.
Hi everyone, this is Bob, and we are delighted to have our soul sister, soul brother, Victoria and Ron spend some time with us this evening. Thank you for being part of this, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Ron and Victoria. And, I'm going to show a little video that tells folks about the Co-Creators Convergence. Then I'll come back and I'll do a more formal interview of Ron and Victoria, and then we'll get started because I am extremely interested in non-duality. And I'm still trying to figure out how to live in that world. So I'm going to ask you for a lot of tips. So So hold on, everyone, and I'm going to share this. I'll be right back. And we're back. So that was a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. And that's how we met Ron and Victoria. It was through our teacher, Barbara Marx Hubbard. And that was way back in 2011, 2012. And it's been a romance ever since. We double date a lot. So it's so good to have you both here, such wise friends. But let me tell you a little bit about Ron and Victoria, and then I'm going to turn the talking stick over to you two. So Victoria and Ron are co-founders of Vistar, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the discovery of our true nature, collective consciousness, and spontaneous creativity. Meeting with small groups for over 30 years, they developed the Vistar method, a spiritual meeting technology for enlightened meetings. And it's very, very effective. They have an upcoming book on the Vistar method. It's gonna launch probably this year, what I'm understanding. Everything's ready to go. Victoria is the author of Spirit Doodling and The Effortless Expression of No Mind, and the children's book, I love this one, Larissa the Fish. Victoria is on the board of directors of Fions New York City and Unity Earth. Ron is the author of 2 poetry books and counting, Unaccustomed Looking and Forever's Looking. Ron and Victoria serve on the advisory board of the Source of Synergy Foundation and are founding members of the Good of the Whole and the Co-Creators Convergence. Yes, we did that in 2013 together. And as you saw, we're coming up on our 9th convergence. And that's going to be, it's sold out. It's in Texas at the White Eagle Lodge. So I'm going to turn it over to you two. I know you have a beautiful plan for us, and this is live on Facebook. So welcome to all of you that are picking us up in Facebook land. And without any further ado, Ron and Victoria, over to you, my friends.
Thank you. Thank you, Noelle and Bob. It's a pleasure to be here. And to share the roots with Barbara Maharishi. That quote of hers, which you chose, has so much meaning and connection to us. Nothing we do is not for the whole. So we're going to begin talking about non-duality, and specifically Advaita Vedanta, which is a branch of Indian philosophy, and its meaning is not to the teaching of the Vedas. And a little bit about the history of the Vedas and where Advaita Vedanta comes from. No one really knows how ancient the teaching of the Vedas is. People trace it back perhaps 2,000 years ago. But since it was an oral teaching, it goes back much farther. So many of the great traditions were initially transmitted orally. In the case of the Vedas, and particularly the Rig Veda, the oral tradition states that it began with a series of hymns. And these hymns were received directly by the rishis, the wise men of that time, when it is said we were closer to the gods. And I just wanted to read you a few words from the first lines of the Rig Veda, the majesty and the power of these words, which are still recited currently in ceremonies and religious ceremonies of various kinds. This is from the book, which I've had for many, many years, and I love so much. Let us bring our minds to rest in the glory of divine truth. May truth inspire our reflection. And then the next lines, called the Gayatri portion of the Vedas, the origins of all the gods, we shall now joyfully proclaim for future ages to behold when these verses are recited. So that's from the Sanskrit. And the teachings from the Vedas were really not well organized initially until the time of Adi Shankara, about 800 AD. And he did a massive job of organizing them and defining the non-dual teaching, which summarized states there is only Brahman, and the self and Brahman are one. And at that time, the way to achieve this realization was through prolonged practice, disciplines. But then, around the turn of last century, something happened. Many of the Eastern teachers in India started sending their most advanced representatives to the West. They said, it is time to bring this Eastern teaching of non-duality to the West. And a great and famous exponent of this non-dual teaching was Ramana Maharishi, who is recognized as the beginner of a long line of students who became enlightened. The story of Ramana's enlightenment is very interesting. He was 16 years old and deadly afraid of dying. And so one day he said, I can't go on like this. I have to face my fear of death. And he lay down, and as best as he could, he simulated dying by separating from one element of his functioning to another. The mind, the body, the feelings, letting them all go one by one, and still having something left over, which you can get rid of. And no matter how hard he tried, no matter what he pushed away from himself, he realized this one presence was there and could not be eliminated. And at that moment, he was said to become enlightened. And so his great gift to the West and to teachers who came after him was to recognize that the way to approach enlightenment was through vichara, meaning inquiry, looking at oneself, self-inquiry, and devotion to that self. And as we all know now, there are many teachers of non-duality who stress different aspects of that teaching, but it is spreading in the West, and it is a very present element in current spirituality. So the path that particularly Ramana Maharishi explicated is called the direct path. And that is so beautiful in what it means. We will talk about it later, but the direct path means that our approach to discover what we are is based on our own direct experience and the investigation of ourselves, of our experience. So the truth is, once again, know thyself. Victoria, I think that's a very brief history of the appearance of non-duality in the West.
Okay, thank you, Ron. So Ron has told us a little bit about the historical aspects of the history of non-duality, and I'm going to tell you about the Victoria and Ron's personal experience of moving into finding that in this day and age, okay? So Ron and I, in our history, spent 12 years in the Gurdjieff work. And if anybody ever spent time in the Gurdjieff work, if you know anything about it, it's a lot of work. And so we worked on ourselves. We really worked on ourselves. We worked on all three centers. We worked on our intellect. We worked on our emotions. We worked on our body. Oh my God, we just did so much. And it was very transforming. I have to say, it's one of the most enlightening and transforming process that I've come across. At the end of it, we were tired. I think when working on ourselves, we were very tired. And we came in contact with a man named Kenneth George Mills, a Canadian metaphysician, musician, conductor, poet, artist, lecturer, a Renaissance man. And when we came in touch with him, we started going to what is called an unfoldment. An unfoldment is a lecture. It's a lecture, so it's a spontaneous lecture that was given by Kenneth Mills. And they're about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And I think, I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but I think there were 30,000 hours of these spontaneous lectures. And so we came there and we started attending the lectures and the many functions in that organization. And Ron and I just have to tell this because Ron and I would sit there and we would say, you know, this is just like the Course in Miracles. this is just like the Gurdjieff work. This is like what Uspensky said. This is like, what Rodney Collins said. This is like the master gave. And we kept going, oh my God, it's just like that. Look at that. Because it was all set in poetry and beautiful language. But I felt it was so similar to things. And one day in an unfoldment, one day I was expressing that to Dr. Mills. And he said, I'm glad you find things so familiar, dear. So I'm glad you find things so familiar. That was a little bit shocking. And of course, I realized that something needed to be changed. And I put aside everything that sounded familiar. Anytime I heard this is like, it's a little thing for me now, this is like. And by the way, all of you, you will never tell anything to anybody that they'll tell you that this is just like something. It's extremely annoying, really, because, everything has uniqueness and everything is alike and different. And you just can't go there. And the minute you say this is like the end. And that's what happened to me. I wasn't really hearing the message. I really wasn't. And I went back to the unfoldments and I stopped saying this is like, and I started to listen. And, I started to hear in a new way. I heard something that was completely radical, astounding. It was just astounding, really, because I just come from all this effort, super effort, Gurdjieff, super effort. And there was this being telling me, or telling us all, or just, beaming it out, that we cannot work our way into enlightenment. That we don't have to, work that way to become what we already are. I mean, it was really, really shocking. The reason I knew it was wonderful because, after all that teaching and all those things, it was like the biggest breath I ever took. It was just like a big breath. And I just went, oh my God, there's something very different here, very different. And, this is deepening with us, and we're going to talk about different things about it, as it is deepening with us, that gift, speak of the gift to the shift. The gift, that's what I would say, that Kenneth Mills gave to us, because it wasn't really a thinking thing. It was just something that got implanted, and it's just like a time capsule, and it's just going out. So that gift has definitely moved tremendously. And so there's a lot more that we want to bring forth about that. But before we do anything, I have to say, before we started this, I'd asked Ron, because I was thinking, again, when we met Dr. Mills, the non-dual standpoint that we had heard somewhere that sounded very dry was so alive and huge and magnificent. It wasn't this really, low-key meditative thing. So I said to Ron, we should start this with something really like full of something, of beauty, of love, of majesty. And we couldn't find the Starscape Singers, by the way, some of their music that we'll talk about a little bit. But I said to him, what's a beautiful music for you? Because he knows so much. So we'd like to share this with you, this piece of music, just to feel the majesty and the glory of what we're talking about. And, we have a lot to look at, because we will be looking a little bit, we will be doing something for Ian, the hurricane of nature, and the people of nature. So, but first of all, let's listen to this music. So I'm going to screen share. Oh, Ron, did you want to say something? Go.
Just all of Dr. Mills' music would all fit in as an introduction here. We chose this. We couldn't find an exact excerpt. This is a piece of music, short, that I've always loved. And it is by Vivaldi. And it is a piece called Gloria by Vivaldi. And when I listen to this, see if you can hear this as well. I hear angels clapping their wings in praise to the One.
So, non-duality. So we're going to have you come in and we're going to do a few things, but we just thought we would start off with the fact that it's a mystery. It's mystery. It's a mystery, of who we are, of what life is. Think how this, if we ever get clear and look around at what our life is and what life is and what's going on. I mean, seriously, it is so phenomenal and so fathomless and such a mystery. We're a speck in a humongous cosmos. I was just reading the book Gaia, the story of Gaia by Jude Caravan. I mean, humongous, just the story of Earth, story of the universe, a cosmic hologram. Then the body, our body. Just get any book. There's some bestsellers about what's going on in the body, the immune system. What goes on in there? It's unbelievable. Every tree, every root, every sky, everything on this earth. It is an incredible mystery. And in all this mystery, I love the non-dual standpoint that basically, what do we know? What do we really know? I know one thing. Let me know if you know that. I know that I exist. Who I am and what I am, maybe not so, but I know that I exist. That I know. So we can say, I know that I exist. And then one of the things that we learned from Kenneth Mills is that the test of the real something is something that doesn't change. We can go back to that later. The unchanging. So then it goes to question, right? What changes in the universe? What changes in our galaxy? What changes on our earth? And what changes in us? What is changing? If whatever is real, whatever the truth is, what we are is unchanging. So that's just the questions I want to kind of bring out, because for me, my body is definitely changing. There's no question about that. Nobody would argue with that. Mind is always changing. Thoughts are always changing. Feelings, oh my God, fluctuations like crazy. Feelings are always changing. So that's one element that I just want to bring up to you for your consideration. We always say to consider it, because we're not asking anybody to believe anything or think about it even, or, go read more about it, get it more information. But basically, just to consider this. I have found in my unfolding that just considering this has done a lot. It's been very practical, as we talk about a little bit, very practical. It just goes inside you and you begin to, every time something happens, there is more space around it. We're not in it so much, believing we're that body, those thoughts are not all as real as they sounded. So I think that's something that we'd like you to consider. And the word not to, and the word wholeness, and oneness, and consciousness is fundamental. So that quality that we're always going around, that oneness, that wholeness, that not to, how do we really see that? How, what is the language, for example, that we use with that? And what would that mean to us? And the idea that that is already present, that is already true and real. What is real is real. It's unchanging. It's always real. It's omnipresent. So, it makes us think about all the things that are changing. Over to you, Ron.
So the beauty of non-duality is the examination of our own experience, because in that experience is a mystery, a question, and an answer. Dr. Kenneth Mills gave us, you could say, the truth in one nutshell. I and my Father are one now and not shall be. The non-dual standpoint is what we are in essence, our true nature, is a reality now. And that is what we need to discover. We have to find what is unchanging in our experience as human beings, what is beyond our experience as human beings. From my own point of view, just to tell you about one particular experience I had in approaching this, was I started thinking about my experiences, the story of my life. When you go to a party and you ask someone, tell me about yourself, what will they say? They will give you a history of where they came from, what they do, what they like, what they don't like. But all of these experiences are like a travelogue in a book. You turn the pages from one experience to another. They are always changing. So what is it that gives us the sense of I, myself, my real self? What is it? Because mixed in all these experiences, there is a sense of a person that does not exist, that is the changing experiences, and that which doesn't change, and that is consciousness. The awareness of the experiences is what is constant, is what, when we say I, is the element in there that we recognize knowingly or unknowingly as the constant. That is what doesn't change through all our experiences and gives us the sense of constancy. Even though we create a person called Ron who changes with his experiences and is not aware until he becomes conscious of it, of his own consciousness as the one unchanging factor which he points to when he says, I. This is a tremendous discovery, and it comes in various ways at us as we come to realize that what we thought was a constant, Ron, Bob, Noel, Victoria, all of us, in this lifetime, which comes and goes, there is something that is unchanging beyond that. And that is, non-duality tells us, that is what you are right now, and nothing can change that except ignorance of that fact, which leads to a lot of suffering. So where do we pin our identity? Very big question, and how we face life.
Thank
Over
you, Ron. Yes, and so in my exploration discoveries in the non-dual world, you might say, I came upon a lot of information that spoke to me, that asked me to inquire, to find Victoria, to find the person Victoria, like this person, a person. And, you know, if you've read any of the work, I think most people here probably have, but if you've read any of it, they just say the biggest thing is that there's no person. Now, that is very radical. You know, it's pretty radical. I mean, come on, but just consider it, because I did that. I sat down, very simple, and I just inquired. I just said, okay, what am I aware of? And, you know, I was definitely aware that I had a body. Seems to come with me. So I have this body, and is the body really Victoria? Is that Victoria? I mean, the body is a body, but is it Victoria? Is it who I am? Not even the name, but who I am. Who I am. Is that who I am? This body? And then I started looking at the thoughts, and oh my God, they come and go, and what a incredible situation thoughts are. I mean, really, I have never found that they go away, but they certainly take their rightful place. And sometimes I think of them as my entertainment, when they're not too negative. It's like there's some things going on. Can't just live in the silence totally. So their thoughts and their emotions. Now, that's a tough one because people think I'm my emotions. By the way, the word emotion is away from. Away from what? Away from what is real, away from who we are. It's not an emotion. It's not the kind of love, I love you. It's not an emotion. It is something much deeper, much more that we know about, because we know about it because we know. Because we know about love, and we know about wonder. We know about those things. But they're not that surface. They're not the things that are in false personality, they call it in the Gurdjieff work. False personality, imaginary. Anyway, I could not really find Victoria. I found thoughts, feelings, I found sensations, lots of sensations. I found lots of opinions. I couldn't even find ego exactly. I couldn't find it. So anyway, this is something that if you read books and go into that field, that you begin to start to think about. And there's this great Rumi poem where Rumi says, it's not Christian, not Jew, not Muslim. And he says, I do not exist. And I thought, what do you mean he doesn't exist? He doesn't exist. I thought, how could he not exist? I mean, but he doesn't exist as Rumi. He doesn't exist as a Christian, Muslim, or Jew. He belongs to the beloved. So I feel it's very practical, very experiential, very actual, because I start to consider that, and I start to let it wave in me, and then it just changes how I view situations. So Ron, we were going to take a pause here and ask people if they have any comments or questions, just to see where we are. So
if you have any comments or questions, you can put them in the chat. I will let you unmute and also start your video if you like to join in conversation.
oh my God.
Hi.
Great.
So my curiosity is about, since I consider both of you experts on Kenneth G. Mills, about the spontaneous unfoldment work as far as it, how it works, how it combines with non-duality, because it's almost as though he becomes the other and then shows people or brings out their divinity. Is that how he used non-duality in the spontaneous unfoldment work?
Ron, do you want to start?
A tough one, sorry.
No, that's a very good question, which he addressed to his students. How do you see me? He asked them over and over again. But I can answer it from my own perception, is that first of all, Dr. Mills is a witness of non-dual standpoint itself.
I see.
He's a living witness of the non-dual standpoint. But even beyond that, how you see a person, a figure, a form, is a question of how we look at them. And in the non-dual standpoint, a form is none other than the manifestation of consciousness itself,
Right.
taking on the form in order to relate, manifest to the dimension, let's say, of the student, of space and time. So depending on how we look at the form, our level of understanding of it, the answer would be given. Did you follow what I was saying?
Yes, it's almost like the observer effect, where the Kenneth G. Mills as the teacher holds space for a creation, Ron, to show up and for him to engage for mutual benefit, right?
Yes, I think there's a
Okay.
certain element of what you're saying is absolutely true.
I'm
It's
simplifying it because that's what I get. I'm trying to understand. I mean, it's so, he is so quantum. He is
He is.
quantum that trying I mean, to watch what he did, it was a miracle what he did usually.
Yes, yes. So you're watching a miracle. You're watching a manifestation for your benefit in order to realize that your understanding, your appreciation of the miracle evidences the fact that you are it also.
As well, yes, okay. Well, okay, but non-dual to me is also not contrast. There's no good or bad. It's all, it just is. And it doesn't appear to have judgment. The Jeff Foster, I think, is who I studied with, and what was the other guy's name I got to meet here? Anyway, I forget, I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. Anyway, it always was surprising how they could get out of judgment, out of discernment, judgment, whatever you want to call it, and just be present with what is without any, I guess, judgment, which comes from the ego.
From belief, from thought, from programming, that the non-dual presence, consciousness or awareness, depending how you use it, is simple, honest, virginal perception.
Virginal.
Virginal perception.
Okay, I never heard anyone use the word like that.
It is uncontaminated
Right.
by thoughts, beliefs, judgment, good, bad. Actually, it happens to us when we look at something, the first second, the first instant, we simply perceive it.
Right.
And that is a magical kingdom that they're talking about, non-duality. And then the interpretation, the naming, all the judgments come in
Reduces
after
it.
the
Yeah.
original perception.
Okay.
So non-duality is our identity, is by its very nature, has no judgment. It is pure perception.
So everything just is, but where is the joy? Because love, if we're in a sea of love and everything is available to us as a participant in that sea of love, shouldn't it include joy? And duality has joy and sadness, or fear and love. It has the contrast.
Yeah, Victoria.
I just think also when we start talking about it, where's the joy? It's like, what do we mean by heart? See, what is the joy? Like, what is joy? I mean, what do we think is joy? Is it like having a bunch of drinks? Is joy, like, what is joy? See, for me, to answer that question, there is so much substance in this standpoint. By the way, Dr. Mills did not call himself a non-dualist or non-duality. That's Ron and I have been following this opening into that whole world. He opened it for us, but he called it the absolute standpoint. But just for me, in my experience, it's something greater than the joy that we talk about with the small j. It's not like I'm going to go around every day being happy. You know, my daughter said there's a thing now in corporate they call it toxic optimism. Yeah, when people get like everything's great and I'm in bliss and this is joyful and thank you for this and I'm so grateful and the world is, come on. That's not what we're talking about. We're not even in that realm, in that language. This is something so much inside of us that there's no way, it's what we are. And what we are, that kind of joy is not a joy for New Year's Eve. It's not a New Year's Eve kind of joy. It's not a New Year's kind of love. It's not a compassion that is like sympathetic. It's not a sympathetic compassion. It's not like a big emotional thing. It's more a presence of awareness. And this is universal. I mean, we're talking about something cosmic. We're talking about something that started, you know, before time and space, you know, something came in and started something, and we're that. We're still in motion with that. So I think that's a very kind of, you know, young way of thinking about it. Like, you know, we can't expect the emotions that we get, and, you know, joy. We don't, you know, there's joy and there's sorrow and all that. It's something much bigger. And the thought of that is really good. It takes, that's what the mind says, where's all my joy? You know, that's what why aren't I having a good time every minute? And why aren't I just, you know, just like, I mean, something's wrong with me. I'm not doing the work. You know, you have to hold, as Jeff Foster, I love Jeff Foster, hold that negativity. That holds us, it holds us, it holds the negativity. We don't have to do anything with it because we're like, we don't exist. Sorry. Okay, well, anyway, thank you. Beautiful,
Good
Captain.
question.
You said some
Wonderful
beautiful. Yeah. That was really, really.
Well,
Bonnie,
I'll
Bonnie,
just say one, oops, I'm sorry, Bonnie, you go ahead.
I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but I've gone through periods where I was given temporary illnesses that physically disformed me so that I could witness how other people perceive me in that situation. And it really opened my eyes, I'll tell you. Yeah. Where I had an allergy and my top lip went the size of a plate out from my face. And I had Bell's palsy. And the way people treat you is so different when they see you in this condition, you know.
Wow.
But I know that I was guided to experience this so I could recognize the whole situation.
Mhm. Wow.
So such a big consideration, really, because, you know, our form is what we all live with and believe in, and our, not only our form, but our resumes and our accomplishments. So the mind is, that's its life. That's that thing, you know, that's why in the non-dual tradition it says you don't really have a life. You don't have a life. That there's a person, a pretend person somewhere that's living a life. But it's a really big question because life with a big L, I loved one of the things Dr. Mills kind of said to me, I got from it, is that living is like making a living. We're living on earth, right? You were born, you're living on earth. That's living. But life is what we talk about, that bigger thing, that huge. Life is, beauty is, love is. Life is. And that living is like, it's like a Rupert Spira, if anybody listens to him. Rupert Spira, and to listen to, he says there's a screen and there's a movie. We are the screen. There's a movie going on, in the movie of our life. Our life is going, there's characters, there's Victoria talking here, there's Victoria the mom. There's a lot of characters of big drama. I mean, seriously, it makes the Ten Commandments look like nothing. So, I mean, you know, but life is something, life is what is really real, and life is what is allowed. There's that screen, so life is this movie, and if the movie went off, the screen would still be there. If the screen went off, no movie consciousness, if that screen went away, there would be no movie. So much to think about that. How, and the screen and the movie, how close are they? How living and life, how close is it? It's interwoven. That screen, the movie goes into the screen, but it still does not touch the screen. The screen is not affected by the movie. The screen is never, the screen doesn't get angry. The screen never doesn't commit things. The screen is there. This is going on, but it's very intimate. And it's not something to throw away like there's no life and we're all, the screen. No, they're very close together. And that intimacy between life, living and life is a very beautiful thing. And that's what Jeff Foster talks a lot about, except taking a look. We want to do that with the storm at the end of this thing. We want to take a look at all the things we're going through. I felt for a long time, I don't live my life enough. I don't live life enough. I'm just in living, you just try to get away from it all and keep busy. But to really put life into it is to accept, to not, I hate the word, I'm not use the word accept, but it's just to really acknowledge it, recognize it, that it's there, acknowledge it, and not, we can say it's bad or good, but it doesn't matter. We can still give it attention. Give it some attention, not to wallow in it. Not to wallow in it, but to give it attention in the means of just.
I take it as understanding situations, understanding from the other person's perspective and from what you're experiencing. In the whole, it's an understanding of life rather than judging the life.
Very good.
So, let's see. Katrine, I don't know if you're still there, if you want to come and say something. Katrine is on the board of directors of the Kenneth George Mills Foundation. So we have Katrine here. Maybe she's not wanting to come in this conversation right now. But if you're there, Katrine, you want to just, unmute yourself and come in here. So,
Am I
we go.
on? I think I'm
Yep.
on. Hold on.
oh, there she is.
Yes, you are.
Well, it's wonderful to have this kind of a conversation. It's really quite extraordinary. We're talking about something that can hardly be talked about. But I do, I just happen, if I can quickly get it, I just happen to have a couple of statements that that Dr. Mills had given about the whole idea of the absolute. As Victoria said, he really didn't talk so much about the idea of non-duality, but he referred to it as the absolute. And I just was looking at, just coincidentally, earlier today and yesterday, I was looking at some statements that he had actually given about oneness, as opposed to duality, I suppose you could say. And the remarkable thing about the way he spoke was that it was very poetic. And the poetry and the imagery was such that it evoked the experience for you. So those of us who are privileged to be in his presence and study with him really had these experiences beyond the mind that here we are trying to articulate with the mind. And the beauty of it is, if we look at some of his words and just see how, are you okay with me just reading a couple of quotes, Victoria?
Sure, yes.
So this idea of the standpoint of oneness and living from that standpoint, and how is it practical? He had said at one point, the ultimate, the absolute, signifies what? The appearance of unification so that oneness prevails. When you live the absolute, you are living as oneness, appearing as you, God appearing as you, not like you or in you, but as you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Katrine.
And there's another one that I just happened to have been looking at. Someone had said to him, so we're all part of the one? And he said, in reality, there is only one.
There's no parts.
And the suggested races, colors, and creeds are just the way the paint book of time dresses it up to keep us entertained. So every time you perceive the unity that is, then you will say, this is all fractured and appears as a multitudinous number of people because my mind is incapable of bringing together in an objective sense the enormous, gigantic concept of oneness. Don't fall for this and for being separate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So then the whole question was, well, and how do you view otherness? You know, how do we see each other? I mean, we can't deny it and we don't want to deny it. I mean, we're on this plane, on this dimension. And it is for the fun of being here and learning how to allow God to live as us. And so with respect to viewing otherness, he said, and this was around Christmas time that he gave this. He said, wrap yourself as a gift and let others say, what ribbons surround your boxed condition? And you say, yes, open me and find me a theme of your allness. Do you dare to view me as an aspect of yourself? How long will we have separateness? As long as you cannot see the beauty of another and know it is yourself. Do you think I'm going to leave Carol looking so gorgeous and have her out there a ravishing woman? I'd be ravished if I did, because I would be right in the realm of attraction. Knowing the beauty that is Carol is myself, I am satisfied to see the facets of my own appearing as another. The handsomeness of Stephen, Terry, Rob, Ben. Boy, do you think I'm going to leave it outside of myself? Wouldn't you be a fool to have all these jewels unset in your ring of engagement with this plane?
Wow.
You know what? I was at that unfoldment. It was here in Norway with these people, Carol, and these people. And
Wow.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
really
think that one of the things we could look at is language, because, you know, very often people are saying oneness, and then of course there's parts. You know, I'm a part of this, and I always think that we can be a part. If we're a part of something, we can be apart from it.
Mhm.
Victoria, maybe I can just go back for a minute.
Yeah.
Just what the readings from Dr. Mills that Katrine gave really related completely to the question that Kathy made and also Bonnie. These are the way, how do we view each other?
Right.
And there was so much about that.
Mhm.
You know,
So beautiful.
in the
And it
Rumi
really-
poem, the poem that everybody talks about all the time, about out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. There's a field, I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, even the sense other, even the word other, even other makes no sense. That's the second part of that. I'll meet you there, but when we lie down in that grass, even the term other makes no sense. So I mean, I know we have a lot of workshops and things that we do where we connect things, the word connect. Why do we need to connect something that's never been separate?
You know, we
Mhm.
often talk about oneness.
Why would we want to have to
Unity.
connect? I mean, you know, how could there be parts of a whole? Because you can't add to it. You can't leave a whole. You can't walk out because we're not a part of a whole. But anyway, I want to go on, Ron, because we wanted to do a little bit about the Vista view, about also the concept of actually we want to do another screen share now. Ron. I wanted to go the impossible dream.
The mission of each true knight his duty, nay, his privilege. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, not one man scorned and covered with scars, still stole with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star.
So, okay. The impossible dream. This is my quest to follow the star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far. Beautiful in its own way, very beautiful. And, you know, climb every mountain, search everywhere, and even somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere over the rainbow, you might find me someday. Someday I'll wish upon a star. So in the non-dual world and in what we learned from Dr. Mills that began all this, that whole sense that song brings up. By the way, that was a song our first teacher loved. That was kind of the song in the Gurdjieff fork. It takes 15 years. It takes time. How could something that's present take time? So that is a very, very interesting thing to consider process and presence, because non-duality is really not a process. There is no how to, it's not something that we're going to develop, create, transform, all the things that have to do with doing. We're not going to be doing those things. It's not a process. And there really isn't a journey, because how can you go to a journey when you're there already? I always say it's like we're home, and you know, we're sitting there with a few people. I'm home, and Noelle says to me, "I'm going to go to find my home." She's in her home. We're sitting in Noelle's home. Sorry, and Noelle says to me, "I need to go find home." And I go, "Noelle, you are at home." And she goes, "Well, not really. I have a lot of work to do. I have a big journey. I'm starting to pack. I have to go find it." But no, don't go looking for home, because you'll just go away from home, and then you'll have to come all the way back home. And it's just this, that's the sense of it, the search. The search itself makes us not able to do the finding. Hey, Ron, want to say something about that?
About what?
About the search. Sorry, the invisible star, the invisible.
Yes, I think that song represents something very beautiful and something very necessary on our journey to realize what the non-dual teaching is telling us. There has to be some preparation for the non-dual teaching. Otherwise, we hear that song and it's beautiful. We have all these songs of hope, of something in the future, something to be reached, of a great evolutionary discovery. But non-duality approaches us and says, you are that goal that you're looking for right now. And that unity that it tells us, that itself tells us we are now, is not that easy to take in intellectually, because it is a fact. And to begin moving from the investigation of, is that true? That I am that now. That
Yes,
is a crucial turning point. And the implications of unity, of one, the consequences of unity, we don't often take in. Because, as Victoria said, we are not a part of unity. We are unity itself. The divine is localized in each of us now. We are that. Not I as person, but I as that am that now. So it's a magnificent, magnificent turn in realization, using the image that Victoria said, we are home now. I don't leave my home on a long journey to search for the truth. I have to take in the fact that I am at home now. And any path that I choose is moving away from home, where I am now. So this realization is truly very beautiful and has a certain amount of preparation, which we need to begin to take that in.
Yeah, thank you. And Katrina, if you could just wait a while, we have a program here put together. Yeah, so that whole sense of process, in my experience, when that stopped, I did not have to stop practicing. See, I think we're very afraid that we might have to stop practice if we decide there's no search. Like if there's no search, there's nothing I need to do to work on myself, because the self that I'm going to try to work on and make more better is illusion, is not real. So why would I have to work on myself? So the question begs, of course, is, can somebody have a sense of presence and enlightenment and be doing bad things? Right? That's a question. There are a lot of teachers and gurus that have brought up that question. Ken Wilber has taken it to a big conversation with growing up, showing up, cleaning up and showing up. So that's a very interesting thing. In my experience, I just bringing awareness to things that seem to be to me, in my judgment, Victoria's judgment, not in keeping with the truth. Things that we see ourselves, our actions that we're doing. And if anybody's honest, they will have a few, a few actions that maybe our thinking tells us we don't measure up. But in my experience, it's like considering that is not all of what I am. That there is something that is not involved with that. That there's a presence, an awareness that's been here. I've always been aware since I was a baby. I remember being aware. There were different, the content was different. Content of awareness. By the way, just a side thing, there was a big thing on the Peace Week that we just went through, some of us, and there was a conversation between Rupert Spira and physicists. And he was talking about consciousness, and he was saying, you're talking about the content of consciousness. because I'm talking about consciousness, not the content. I want to be interested in consciousness, awareness, not the content of what we're aware of. Very hard to move our head away from content. And believe it or not, our lives are content. They're content. So just all the time having that come to me, just waft through, knowing that there is an awareness, even though this is going on, not trying to change it. Not trying to change it. I've worked too hard. You have to be in the good G4, try to change your moving center and try to change. I will never do that again, I'll never be angry. I'll never complain. Try not to complain. Just try not to complain, inner or outer, for 2 days.
So we are talking about the practicality of non-duality. The practicality of realization of one is immense. To truly realize that another, as we heard before, is a representation of myself, of that one. Imagine what that does to a change in how we approach each other, society. It certainly gives new meaning to the golden rule when understood from a non-dual standpoint. It changes everything. And if I may, Victoria, I have a short excerpt from Rupert Spira I'd like to show.
Sure.
I'd like to read it, actually. It's so beautiful. He has this on his inner cover of several of his books. And it says it so beautifully. In this book, it is suggested that consciousness is the fundamental underlying reality of the apparent duality of mind and matter, and that the overlooking, forgetting, or ignoring of this reality is the root cause of both the existential unhappiness that pervades and motivates most people's lives and the wider conflicts that exist between communities and nations. Conversely, it is suggested that the recognition of the fundamental reality of consciousness is the prerequisite and a necessary and sufficient condition for an individual's quest for lasting happiness, and at the same time, the foundation of world peace. The consequences of the realization that we are one and another is myself are enormous. It will change every aspect of our relationship and of society.
Ron, I just want to go right to that, especially for Bob and Noel here and Kathy. So, having been inundated with activists in Unity Earth, hundreds of wonderful, amazing activists, and thinking a lot about that, about activism. And I have actually come to the kind of premise that activism is indivisible oneness. Activism. It's like it's indivisible activism. It's indivisible activism. It comes from one. It really comes from there, even though it appears. And also that, of course, the source of it too. And because there's so much talk in what we're hearing about being and doing, I'm a human being, I'm not a human being doing, like, and just for us to consider that one is one. So everything that we know in this world is somehow one. Like was being said, there is no parts. So that activism is contained. It's like our body is contained in consciousness. Our consciousness is not in our body. I mean, they're trying to find it in the brain, and maybe they will. I don't really know. I don't know much about that, but our body is in consciousness. And so activism is in consciousness, is in it. That's the holder. And so I just think that all the people that are so involved in that, who are actually putting their words, their life on the line, and going out there, boots on the ground, as they say, and working to take a look at the changing, the changing world. Try to do what you can in the changing. You have to. Somebody has to go and help those people in Florida. There has to be somebody. People need to do that for each other. So that the work that appears in the changing is great. The only thing that makes me think about it a lot, especially being in the Sustainable Development Goals Synergy Circle from the UN, what makes me think about that is what would happen if we began to view those situations from the unchanging? What if we began to view what needs to be changed from the unchanging? Because otherwise, we are going to be trying to do change in the same frequency, the same level that created it. We've been saying that for like 20 years. So that changing that's happening, the activists, the people who are really, really on the forefront of putting what is inside the soul out there and doing, they are only doing because they're being. They can't be doing or not. They wouldn't, if they weren't being, there would be no doing. That's how I think of it now. When I see this more, and it's helped me, because I've been more in the being category, never been out there, really bringing things out, being resident, trying to spread the message, not an easy thing. And, trying to grow like what you're doing, Kathy, based on what she does, what you guys do. It's just something that I have felt for a long time. One of the reasons why I want to talk to that community about this, the reasons we brought it to Peace Week, is because it's such a huge energy. That standpoint is such a huge energy. When you begin to consider that we already are that we already have everything, and we're not a needy person. We're not a person who has to help others, really. We are help itself. We are help itself. We are a continuum. And that is a very different energy, from getting all, and everybody gets burnt out. Because you can only burn out a personality and a thought and a body, but you can't burn out conscious awareness. Even in the Upanishad says, cannot be burnt. Ron?
So it's really wonderful to consider this in terms of what we're being told from quantum physics. Everyone is talking about this in spirituality, how there is nothing local in the universe. There is no place which is separate from the whole. The consequences of one are enormous when we really start to take it in. In quantum physics, we know that we are connected to the whole now, beyond space and time. Beyond space and time. That connection is so deep that it is hard to take it in. It's hard to conceive of it. It is such a fundamental fact of unity, of oneness. When we consider that from that point of view, anything that we do counts for the whole. There is no isolated action. If the action comes from intention, good intention, it counts. If it counts if the action comes from its opposite, it counts. We have to ask, is there any connection between what manifests and what we are holding as our intention? What are the laws in this life, in this living, that connects us to the reality that appears to us? But one thing we do know, every movement that happens, our desire to do good, our desire to respond to Florida, our desire to weep together at Sandy Hook, what happened there. These are evidences of connectedness, which is only pointing at a much larger connectedness that we are. So the practicality of the non-dual standpoint, everything we do counts. And all the wishes of groups of people to help, to love another as best they can, all of these come only from one source. They are a manifestation in human being of the divine. There is nothing which is not of that one. That's quite a concept to take in, and that's quite a feeling to take in. We count. Every effort counts. And we're doing it together.
Yeah. So we want to take the last few minutes and in silence, just take some silence to do whatever it is that we do each individually. Everybody has their way of prayer or giving energy, and just to send it to first of all the hurricane, because that hurricane is something that's part of what we are here, and so to really include that, not just the wishes for the human beings and the animals and the trees, but for the hurricane itself and for the energy of wind and the energy of rain. And just let's take a few minutes before we close just to send that, considering what we heard of this great expanse of what is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie and Katrine and Kathy, for being here with us. And Bob and Noel. Bob and Noel,
Thank you so much.
you're the sweet ones. You're so
Nice to
sweet.
see you, Katrine.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so
everybody. And
much.
we will see you again. Bonnie, I hope to see you again. And really good. Thank you for what you
Bonnie
contributed.
had some beautiful comments. She said, could the journey be the awareness of our personal growth? And she said, to me, the recognizing and growth will be done our entire lives. There's a lot of wisdom there. And
Beautiful.
Kathy says the concepts are simple. In fact, they're so simple, they're difficult to accept for people that cannot feel the truth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
That's so
Catherine.
true.
Yes.
Okay, well, time to call it a day. Okay, thank you, Bob and Noel. You're absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for
Beautiful
coming,
time
and
together.
everyone online that's watching. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Love you much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Good morning.